Traditional clothing added a vivid brightness to observe. The aromas of food wafted throughout the basketball field house. Beating drums symbolized the heartbeat of Mother Earth, and these were just some of the sights and sounds at the 13th Conestoga College powwow held last Saturday. Food columnist Andrew Coppolino went to the event and had a bite to eat or two, so there were tastes of the event as well. He's here to tell us about it. Morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Craig.
So tell us about this. What did you see? What did you hear at the powwow event?
Lots of people. About 5,000 people came through the doors at the college. As you mentioned, the sights and sounds of art, music, traditional garments and dress, vendors and booths, a children's activity center, and of course, food. This was the Lucky 13th powwow hosted by the Conestoga College Indigenous Services. As it has been for many organizations, this was the first time back in person since the pandemic. And there were a few food purveyors as well. Destiny Moser, Sydney Keedwell, Rick Antone of Two Turtles, and Nancy Laughing Papineau, owner of 1180 Catering. So overall, it was a celebration of many aspects of Indigenous culture. Really cool to see and hear.
So the food part, though, what did you eat?
I spoke to Moser and Keedwell, they're local chefs with Indigenous background. It wasn't just food to eat, it was history and culture as well. Chef Moser operates Cedar Spoon Indigenous Catering. She gave me a quick overview of the food that they prepared there that day. The dishes were good examples of Indigenous foods with a rich history, and that includes bannock and bison sausages. That's a bison sausage wrapped in bannock, kind of unique, and a vegetarian gluten-free dish as well.
Today we are serving bison sausage wrapped in bannock, and then for our vegetarian gluten-free guests, we also have a vegetarian Three Sister chili. Corn, beans, and squash, and so we've added the corn, beans, and squash, and then just to give it some more filler, we put some extra food that would have come with the settlers, like onions and peppers and tomatoes.
The Three Sisters traditionally squash, maize, or corn, and climbing beans. It's a wonderful example, Craig, of agricultural ingenuity, the main crops of many Indigenous peoples in North America for centuries. It's a great example of symbiosis. So you've got corn and beans planted together in these little hillocks along with the squash. The corn stalk becomes kind of like a trellis for the beans, which is really, really interesting. Chemically, those beans fix nitrogen in the soil. The mounds stabilize the corn. The squash plants shade the ground and retain moisture. It's just brilliant. And the resulting stew and chili is pretty good too. Sourcing ingredients is difficult in the wintertime, but Sydney Keedwell explained the alliances and relationships that are most important there.
Obviously in the winter it's a little bit harder to get locally grown produce, but we did our best to source our vegetables through our suppliers that choose local farms. For the squash, we used squash from Stavanis. We sourced the sausages from Fat Sparrow. So Fat Sparrow went to a local bison farm and they made the sausages for us. Obviously we have a really great relationship with them. They're great allies. So we tried to choose local where we could.
Keedwell was head chef at Taco Farm before it closed, and she's now at the White Owl Native Ancestry Association, and her cooking blends a unique Indigenous Canadian foods with Mexican.
I want to go back a sec here to something Chef Destiny Moser mentioned, settlers' food. What did you learn about that?
Yeah, it's good to reflect that there was a whole culinary food culture here long before the Europeans arrived. They brought many of their foods with them. Something like the Three Sisters are crops, like I said, that are native to North America as well. Bison was an indigenous species in North America, but the settlers brought cattle, and that became sort of the go-to kind of beef product. It was Indigenous chefs' project that we were at today to foreground that we're talking about today, to foreground the original and native foods of Turtle Island.
And you mentioned bannock there, but what role did it play on the menu at the powwow? What did you learn about its place in the actual history of Indigenous food?
Well, it's a basic fry bread, quick bread, or camp bread, whatever you want to call it, flour, water, some kind of fat. Bannock shares a unique history. I think it's important to recognize it's an example of where these cultures intersected. Here's Sydney Keedwell.
I always try and keep in mind that though bannock is really culturally significant for us, it has come out of colonialism. So it was a food of survival. It meant, on reservations, that's what they had. And so we kind of base this off a scone dog, which you typically do with like a hot dog and wrap it in bannock and fry it.
I said intersect a moment ago, but there was more to it than that. It's something a little bit darker. It's believed Scottish fur traders made a quick bread on a bannock stone in a fire pit, sort of in the 18th century. Indigenous peoples eventually adopted bannock. They often used corn or plants for their flour rather than the wheat of Europeans. Keedwell noted that Indigenous peoples cooked bannock for survival when they were moved off the land and were not able to hunt, and they started making bannock just to survive.
Right.
So it's got that kind of element to it as well.
Wow, yeah. In your time at the powwow, what did you learn overall about the role that food plays for the chefs that you spoke with?
Yeah, for both of these chefs, they continue to learn about their Indigenous heritage, and events like the powwow are a way for all of us to learn and share that. And speaking with Moser and Keedwell, I got a sense that they felt they're both part of a much larger cycle. Destiny Moser explains.
We don't believe in waste. So food is grown, yes, we need to eat it, but we're not supposed to overindulge. So yes, we need the animal, we need the plants. So as we prepare these meals, we want to make sure that we're constantly giving gratitude back to Mother Earth for allowing us to have this food.
So the powwow had, Craig, a really distinctive energy, I felt. There was a sense of celebration everywhere, including with the food. And I also share that Three Sisters chili recipe, too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So every week you offer us a shout out or an upcoming event. We should